Okay, so this book is fantastic, everybody. I feel like I should say y'all. um, Birthing a Greater Reality, a guide for conscious evolution. Wow, right? Because we all want to know how to raise our consciousness and awaken to our true self. We all want to know how to be the most spiritual us possible. We all want a more enlightened, peaceful world with a spiritual core. So here's the truth, and then you can go home after this, or you can wait for the next 20 minutes. But here's what it comes down to in a nutshell. You have to do the inner work. Oh, that's hard. Can't you tell us something easier, Stacy? No, you gotta do the inner work. And it's not just about saying words or saying affirmations or showing up positive, but you have to consciously evolve your relationship with yourself as well as others in your life so that you can grow into your awakened self and change the world. Because we know, as they just sang too so beautifully, when one of us changes and evolves, so does everyone around us. And then it's a domino effect. That when one person awakens to their true self, their divine self, we all have that opportunity to awaken to our true self. I love Dr. Nicole LaPera's work. She's known as the holistic psychologist. And here is our first slide. She says, here's our work. To bring forth our authentic essence and purpose, and it's the follow through on that intention that allows this new self to emerge. Notice she has a capital S, self, right? And then she continues, however, we only begin the process of becoming who we want to become by first cultivating non-judgmental awareness of who we are right now. To get to where we are going, we must understand where we are starting. We just want to be there a lot of times, right? But we really need to look at where are we starting. But also what I'm hearing in that is to be gentle with yourself when you are looking at where am I right now. To be honest with yourself about where you are right now. But also to remember that whatever has happened in the past does not have the power to negate your inherent worthiness. You are worthy right now. You always have been. So whatever has happened in the past, it doesn't negate your inherent worthiness. You are right here in this now moment, and you are worthy now. So as you're doing that inner work, to remember that also. So conscious evolution is oftentimes compared to birth. Robert Brumet mentions that in the book. Sometimes we talk about the butterfly, right, where there's a transformation that happens in our conscious evolution. And that's not always comfortable. It's often messy. And I was thinking about the process of birth, having two sons. And I was thinking, in that process of birth, what do you have to do? You have to breathe. You have to listen to those who are supporting and guiding you. You have to get support. And you have to know that it takes as long as it takes to go through the process. But that process of birth teaches us how to allow for new life to happen, new life within us and new life around us. So Robert Brumet writes, evolution may be seen as that of continuous birthing into a greater reality. We're constantly giving birth to a greater reality, a new reality, based on our new thoughts, based on our new us. So it was funny, I was on a panel last Sunday, actually. There's just a couple of us who had graduated last year from ministerial school, and so they asked us to speak about our experience this last year, really 3 years for myself and the field ministry program, to students who are about to graduate. So I kind of really told them the truth, that it can be hard work. You're a CEO of a nonprofit, folks. Here's everything you got to do. And they were like, oh, right? Because when you're in ministerial school, you're like, I'm praying, I'm meditating, I'm doing a fantastic Sunday service. They don't realize that's like 10% of the job. So I kind of gave them a truth bomb there. But then I also mentioned, really it's not about numbers, not about all of that. It's about raising consciousness. So one ministerial student said to me like, oh, I was so happy to hear that at the end, that you said it's really comes down to raising consciousness, because I'm thinking, and he said, but maybe I'm just being Pollyanna or overly optimistic, but once I raise consciousness, it'll be smooth sailing. I also laughed. I said, no, actually what happens is you're inviting a healing to happen, and it could get messier. He didn't want to hear that. Yeah. Actually what happens is that we invite this healing. So again, healing, like coming out of that cocoon, it's not always easy. And we might not do it well the first time, or the second time, or the 25th time that we're trying to repair a relationship with ourselves or with another, or when we're trying to kick a habit, right? We may not show up and do it with grace and ease the first time or 2 or 25. It's not easy to show up for the first time in a new healed or healing way. But we keep coming to it again. So for my own self, I'm going to show up very aware of myself, of my own triggers, of my past conditioning, of my attachment style. Attachment style is a whole nother workshop. And then I do my best to be the harmony and the peace I want to experience. So consciousness raising is really about that intention to keep knowing ourselves and healing ourselves, and knowing and healing the relationships that we're in, and knowing that it's really about connection. It's really about, I want to move forward in connection and love with myself and with others. And first, it's about awakening to the divine within me. That's where it starts. I awaken to the divine within, to the true self, to my I am. And what gets in the way of us remembering our divine self, that we're divine expressions? Well, Robert Brumet points out, and I've noticed this in myself and others, that we get caught up in our 5 senses in the physical world. We get caught up in work and errands and family and running around. We forget. And we don't quiet our minds. We scroll, we watch, we listen to news or gossip, we talk. We forget to listen to the wisdom that's within us. We forget to be still. We forget that we're part of and connected to a spiritual wisdom network. Yeah, we're connected to a spiritual wisdom network. You can call it the field of potentiality, the force, the universe, universal life presence, but you are part of it. You are connected to it. And instead of looking outside to the world outside of us to give us answers and choosing noise, because what that does is it just blocks us off to hearing and realizing who we truly are, powerful creators. We're here to be powerful creators. But that gets scary, right? So then the noise comes in, the distractions come in. So it's about reminding us to stop getting distracted, to stop busying our minds and our ears, and getting still and listening and connecting. And remember, we are already connected all the time to that spiritual wisdom network. So in the book, he talks about the metaphysical, he talks about the story of Adam and Eve. And I don't usually do Bible, but I got my boots on today, everybody. So I figure we'll do Boots and Bible today. Okay, Boots and Bible, okay. But in Unity, we talk about the Bible in a metaphysical way. So, and I know we have lots of new folks. So the metaphysical telling of Adam and Eve is really, it's a story about us waking up to our divine identity. So metaphysically, when we say metaphysically interpret, we mean beyond the physical or literal interpretation. We look at what's the spiritual nature of the story. Because we see the Bible really as the evolution, the storytelling, the evolution of the human soul. We look at the historical aspects also, what was going on at that time. And so we use the Revealing Word and the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, which were texts written and compiled by our co-founder Charles Fillmore, which has metaphors and scientific references and educational discoveries, theories of the time. But really it's to highlight the esoteric meaning of names, and especially those Hebrew names, because sometimes you get a city and a person with the same name, but they have different meanings to them. So here, again, so there's a lot on this slide, but I just wanted to walk you through what is that process so the Bible can come alive for us today. So when we look at the metaphysical meaning, and then I'll go through the story, but so you have the background already in your mind. So we've got Adam. Okay, that was the closest representation, folks, of Adam and Eve. Again, just a little asterisk, not historically accurate, okay? I'm 100% sure they weren't white. That's the closest I could get. There was some, just by the way, there was some Eves with like blonde, luscious hair, and she was like seductive looking, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Again, a whole nother Sunday. Okay, back to Adam and Eve. So Adam really represents metaphysically God in human form. However, he thinks he can nourish himself with food and drink alone. It's that reminder that when we focus just on the physical part of us, it's not enough, that we also need to focus on the spiritual part of us. Eve represents that love or feeling consciousness. It's that wisdom plus feeling together, and of course, the mother of all living beings. Tree of life representing that infinite wisdom that is within each and every one of us. The tree of knowledge, that intellectual knowledge, but it really is about consulting the outside world instead of spirit within. The infamous serpent, which is sense consciousness, denying our spiritual self. Good and evil, again in unity we look at good and evil similar to heaven and hell. It's a place in consciousness that we can put ourselves in at any time. The choice is up to us. And then the Garden of Eden is really that reminder that we're here, or that we were given everything we need to create, and we're here to manifest. We're here to create harmony and beauty and order in our lives. We've been given the tools to do that. So let's turn to, now, a little revealing here. I love the Children's Illustrated Bible because it has pictures, everyone. It's like the Cliff Notes version also, but they've got beautiful photos and illustrations. I mean, just here's Esther becomes queen. Ooh, that's a good one. Look, can you see the beautiful? Okay. If you were expecting like a real Bible. So here's what it says. In the east, in Eden, God made a garden in which grew every tree and plant, and at the very center stood the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. God put the man into the garden, telling him he might eat any fruit he wished, except from the tree of knowledge, for if he were to eat that, he would die. In other words, when we look at this metaphysically, if you live only in your head, only in your intellect, your soul will die. We need to be filling up our spiritual selves. We see this in our culture today, right? People are sad, depressed, anxious. Why? Because we keep looking outside to the intellect, to the social media, to everything outside of ourselves. So then God brought to the man Adam all the animals, but then, key part of the story, everyone, God then sent Adam into a deep sleep. That deep sleep is when we forget our I am, when we forget that we are God in human form. We fall asleep to the remembering of who we really are. And then while he slept, he took one of his ribs and made woman, which seems like it would wake him up and really, really hurt. But okay. So now he has a wife, Eve. Now, Adam and Eve, they walked around naked and happy with no need of clothes. Again, now happy in just being and expressing. In other words, they don't need all the outer material things, literally the material clothes. You can walk around and be happy, but don't burden yourself with all the stuff. Well, now we get the serpent. And the serpent asks Eve, well, wouldn't you like to have any fruit you'd like to eat? And she says yes, and any fruit except for that of the tree of knowledge. If we eat that, we die. And then the serpent, of course, that serpent wants to deny our spiritual self. So he says, oh, you won't die. Instead, you'll discover the difference between God, or between good and evil, and you'll be equal to God. So in this part of the story, when we deny our spiritual self and we just want our ego to take over, I'm God, right? I'm God of my little chiefdom. I'm God of this. We see this in politicians. We see this in billionaires. We see this in mafiosos, right? I am God. We take on all of our ego. Again, we forget our spiritual self. So then the woman gazed at the tree and was tempted by the juicy fruit that would make her wise, and she picked one and ate it and gave one to her husband. So again, the temptation from the outside world. Be this, do this, look like this. You'll be happy when you buy that. And then in the cool of the evening, they heard the voice of God walk into the garden, and they hid. And so then God would not see them, and then God called to Adam, Adam, where are you? And Adam said, I heard your voice, and I was afraid, so I hid. Anyone been in meditation, and you've heard a message from Spirit, from God, your higher self, and you're like, oh no. I think I've told the story with our older son. When I went into meditation, I was like, here I am, God. Anything you need, here I am. I'm here for you. Have a baby. And I was like, I don't think you heard me. I said, I am here and I will do anything for you. And I heard, have a baby. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take that to Juan because he will definitely say no. Of course, I went to Juan and he was like, well, if that's what you heard, we got to do that. I was like, okay. Yeah. Sometimes we hear the voice of God, that voice of our internal wisdom, the God of our understanding, our spiritual self, our higher self, and it scares us. We hear the answer, but we run away. But I love this part, because then he says, it was the woman who gave me the fruit. Totally throws her under the bus, right? And then Eve says, it's the serpent who made me do it. Totally throws the serpent under the bus. Again, because we don't want to take responsibility for our current circumstances. It is much easier to say, well, my husband plays loud music in the morning, so I can't meditate. Or, well, my friend came at me with this, and so there was no way I could stay peaceful. Right? We want to blame everyone else for where we are right now. So then God cursed the serpent and banished them from the garden and gave clothes to Adam and Eve, saying, now that you know both good and evil, you must leave Eden. And he drove them out of the garden and into the world. In other words, we need to remember that it's not all about the intellect and collecting information and knowledge, but it is about waking up and remembering that we are spiritual, creative expressions of the one power and one presence of the universe. That instead of collecting things and staying blind to ourselves and not self-aware, it's about really, really, really looking at our actions and how we can more fully express the divine beings that we are. This is when we create beauty and harmony in our lives and with those in our lives. What we are seeking is not out there, it's within us. And we're connected to a great infinite presence. And when one of us raises up, the rest of us raises up. When one of us goes down, Bye-bye, serpent. The rest of us go down. Bye-bye, Adam and Eve, right? So Robert Brumet points out that it appears based on this story that we're being expelled for disobedience. But really, it is that you needed to leave so you can grow up spiritually. You were asleep, and now you get to awaken. And it's not about the material, it's about the spiritual. It's your time to become a co-creator in the world. You get to awaken to the fact that you are not a limited physical being, but that you are the hands and the eyes of God, of Source, of life energy. Here's what Robert Brumet says in this slide. As the hands and feet of the One, you are destined to be a co-creator of the universe. And so just a moment about relationships, because that's usually a sticky part, right? I mean, I am so spiritual. And then someone comes at me and I'm like, Gah, right? I forget all of my teachings. It's in relationships where we really start to kind of get stuck with our whole selves, our true selves. And so just that reminder that we have to entertain the idea that maybe we're wrong. We studied the book a couple years ago, Anatomy of Peace, and it says this in that book, on this slide. There are two ways of being, one with a heart at war and the other with a heart of peace. So the more sure we are that we're right, the more likely we are that we're mistaken. It also says in Anatomy of Peace, no conflict can be solved so long as all parties are convinced that they are right. Solution is possible only when at least one party may begin to see how they are wrong. So it's actually when we assume that we're mistaken that we start to build connection. So starting to make it a routine to ask, what if I'm wrong? What if there is a possibility that I don't have all the correct information? What if I entertain for a moment that the other person's story is right? It says the deepest way we are right or wrong is in our way of being toward others. I can be right on the surface in my behavior or position while being entirely mistaken beneath in my way of being. See, in every moment we are choosing to be either at peace with ourselves and others, or at war with ourselves and others. But when we choose peace, we're choosing to heal ourselves and others. And then the wave begins, and then the consciousness tide rises. So it says if you're going to invite change in them, there is something that first must change in you. If you want change in the world, then the invitation is to change within yourself first. So first, heal yourself, because ultimately that's what will raise the conscious vibration of the world. Continue to seek your purpose, to remember the truth of your being, that amazing connection that you have to the larger part of life that you are part of. Because it's from this place that you will create and share beauty and harmony in the world. And so get yourself back into the Garden of Eden to create the beautiful world you want to be a part of. Blessings, everyone.